This is Gemara Menachos, Daf Gimel. Baruch Hashem, as we are diving deeply into a new Mesechta, we like all the learning to be dedicated as an incredible schos aliyas neshama for Aryeh ben Ya'akov v'siyata d'shmaya, the continued Koyach HaTorah of Talmud Torah Derabim should elevate the heilige neshama of Aryeh ben Ya'akov to a higher and higher place in Gan Eden Shel Maila. We're holding on the bottom of Beis and Beis by the parentheses about 10 lines from the bottom, in which the Gemara quotes a simin, which is a mnemonic in which will teach us about Shitas Reb Shimon, which we started in the previous year. So says the Gemara, Ela me'ata. Really picking it up almost in the middle of the conversation. Ela me'at, that if you're going to say what? That when you have a kavana that is clearly for the wrong purpose, they will not passel up your carbon. Oilas ha'oif shemalka lemala. If you have an oilas ha'oif that you do malika above the midpoint on the mizbeach, misham chatas ha'oif, and what your kavana was for a chatas. Again, it's an oila, it's a knife. You're doing malika, a shchita with your thumb, but the kavana that you're having is for a chatas ha'oif. Teiratzeh. So based on what Rav Shimon just said, it should work. Why? Because because where are you breaking it? The location should show us that it's clearly a oilas oif. Why? Because if it was a chatas oif, would it have been brought lemala on the mizbeach? Absolutely not. If it was a chatas oif, it would have been brought lemata. So asks the Gemara and Rav Shimon, based on your shita, the Maisa Mechichan Aleha proves to us what's going on, and therefore it should be kosher. This case should be kosher as well. So what's the kasha? The kasha is that we learned on Zvacham Daf Samach Dalid that such a case does not work. Responds the Gemara, Atu chatas oif lemala mi lasa. The malika of a chatas, if it's done above, is it not mutter? Meaning, you're right that the chatas should be done lemata. But let's say a chatas is done lemala, it's kosher. And because if a chatas is done lemala, it's kosher, you lost the maisel meichichin aleha. It's no longer that the actions are clear what you did, because a chatas could have been brought there as well. How do I know? Hamamar malika b'chol makayim b'mizbeach ksheira. Malika, any place on the mizbeach is kosher, and therefore it's not a kasher in Rav Shimon, because it's not maisel meichichan aleha. The actions do not prove what you're doing. Why do the actions not prove what you're doing? Because a chatas could be brought there as well. Frak Gemara number 2, 4 lines on the bottom. Oilas oif shemita dam lemala. An oilas oif that your mitzah, you squeeze the dam lemala. And why you had in mind the shem chatas oif? Nachamol teiratze. Even though your kavanah is for a chatas, it should work as an oila. Why? The mice improved to us. It's an oilas oif. Why? It would have been done in the bradam. So the same kasha, that same Mishnah Zvachim Daf Samach Dalid showed us that this case is not a tiratza for the bailam, but it should be. Says the Gemara, Mata should have been done. So responds the Gemara, in this case again, we cannot say Maiseh Mechichan Aleha. As we turn over to Gimel Amud Aleph, Amri, those who would see the Koyin, as Rashi points out, the Inshi, Amri Inshi, Vade Chatasi, the people would think that this is a chatas, and that's obviously a problem. Amri Inchi, because it's supposed to be an Ayla. So because, and our whole kasha was, I myself, Machichan Alel, says the Gemara, no, there's no myself, Machichan Alel. Amri Inchi Vadi Chatasi. Why? Because maybe it's a Chatas, and he's going to do the Mitzui after the Azaya, after the sprinkling. The location shows us. No, Damar Mar, Mitzah Dama B'Chomakim Mizbeach Kishira. Kasha number 3, 3 lines down, Gimel Amid Aleph. Chatas Oiv Sheizi Dama Lematam L'Shem Oilas Oiv. A Chatas that you sprinkle the dam Lematan, you had in mind for an Oilah. Teirot, why? Cause the action should show us the location. The fact that it's lemata should show us that it's a chatas. You would have done mitzvah, not hazaya, and it would have been lemala. Responds the Gemara, Chanami, you're right. Rav Shimon holds this case is kosher. Ella, or they take out the word Ella, Menachos Taimus Lizvachim. But you can't ask a kasha, because when we say that Menachos are not like Zvachim Kamar, Lizvachim, Veloi La Eilais. But indeed, when it comes to Eilais, Rav Shimon would hold they are indeed in some cases similar to the Menachos. Continues the Gemara based on this last detail that we just said that according to Rav Shimon, a mincha is not the same as a zevach. A mincha is not the same as an animal, which shows us seemingly that if we have a zevach, a carbon, and it's done for the wrong intent, that you're never going to have a case that will be okay. But says the Gemara, 10 lines down, Kachi Kachim, that were shechted Batsafon for Shachi Kalim, Leiratsu should work. Why? Again, because according to Rav Shimon, the action should prove the Kachi Kachim, they knew why. The Kachi Kalim, Badaram Avi Avila, it's in the wrong place. So Nacham of the location should be enough to prove, and therefore that should kasher up the carbon in as much as the kavana was for the wrong place. Responds the Gemara, Eimer Damar Achmana. Responds the Gemara, when does the Torah say the kachi kalim? Af b'daraim could be brought even in the daraim, even in the south. V'daraim v'lei b'tzafayim mi'amar, does it say it can't be brought in the north? It would even work there, b'diavad etzanan. As we learned in Amisha, shchita zebechal makim b'azara. The shchita of kachei kalim, says again in Gemara in Zvachim Daf Nunhei, could be done anywhere, be'azara. Says the Gemara, kachei kalim, sheshachtam v'adaran l'shem kachei kachim leiratzu. The flip side. Why? Because myself, they knew why. Because if they were kachim, then what should have been done? But fine. Responds the Gemara, Amri, kachim, then who? No. People are going to think that they are kachim. And you did the wrong thing. They're just going to think that you shechted in the wrong place. And that's why we can't say that it's kosher. Says the Gemara, wait, 1 second. This goes connected the whole premise of Rav Shimon. If you're going to tell me that we always have to worry that people are going to think that maybe you brought it in the wrong place. So was Rav Shimon's whole original din. Machvas marcheshes. So in that case as well, Nami, we should be concerned. Haidika comments law, the marcheshes, because people will say, he did the kmitza for the marcheshes. No, Amar, hay marcheshes neder. V'adam aisla b'machvas. The marcheshes that which he brought in a it's really Marcheshes. Basically, the Gemara is asking that once you're going to say such a yisoid, once you're willing to entertain that we have to be concerned that the onlooker won't know what's going on and he's going to mess up, so says the Gemara, now your whole yisoid of Rav Shimon went out the window. So responds the Gemara, Hasam kinam Marcheshes nadar, over there, even if you made a neder to bring a mincha on a Marcheshes, ki maisla b'machvas, machvas avoy. By bringing in a machvas, makes it into a different type of carbon, makes it into minchas machvas, meaning it changes automatically based on how it is brought. Keditanan, avoy keditanan, oimer alai b'machvas. Behevi b'marcheshes, or b'marcheshes hevi machvas, mashe hevi. That was you brought v'idei nidroi loy yatsa. So says the Gemara, it's not a kasha on Rav Shimon, because indeed, if you brought it for the wrong thing, it automatically assumes that type of carbon. It says the Gemara, Dilma Amar Zu Lahavi. Dilma Mahavizu, but maybe he said that his nether should bring this flour as a minchas marcheshes, and therefore, if he said zu, it will not be able to become a minchas machvas, even if he made it in a machvas. Vehevi marcheshes keditnan zu lahavi b'machvas. Zu lahavi b'machvas. This flour should run a machvas. Vehevi Cheshes, and you brought him Marcheshes, or b'marcheshes and l'may sevi machvas harei psula. It's possible because he didn't bring you that which you said, and therefore, in our case, it's not going to automatically assume the other carbon. So, ask the Gemara, it should be like a regular carbon with the wrong kavana. So, according to Rav Shimon, why does Rav Shimon say that the Maisa Mochichem Aleha? Responds the Gemara, the Rabbanan, Hachanami. According to Rabbanan, you're right. According to Rabbanan, that which the Kohen says is meaningless. But the Reb Shimon, Kivan to Amar Reb Shimon, Af Yidei Nidra Yotza, Hama Kviyuta Demana V'loi Klum Hu. We see that the case that we're discussing is that he put it in the Keli, and V'loi Klum Hu, that is not binding itself. It is irrelevant. We're going to have to look at the actions. That's how the Gemara defends. Shitas Rav Shimon. Continues the Gemara. Let me add another question, Rav Shimon. Oy lo sheshachta l'shem chatos teirotze why dai zachar v'nekeva. The oil is a zachar and the chatos is a keva. So when you said that this oil should be a chatos, clearly what you're saying is false, and therefore we should go by the Maisam Mechichan Allah. Says Markimadika Seir Nasi the Zachar Lo Yedia. It is shaykh to have a chatos by a Zachar, by the Seir Nasi. Therefore, it's not clear that which he said is not true, and therefore we can't go by his Maisim. Amr l'shem chatos yachin ma'ikalemei. What if he said, the Kohen said explicitly, he's bringing this oila as a chatos yachid. So now we can't say, oh, he meant a chatos nazir. Oh, he meant the sir nasi, excuse me. The su. And furthermore, chatos yachid yachid l'shem oila teiratze. Why? The chatos nekeva v'oila zachar. Responds the Gemara, Mechas Yabal, the animals' private areas were covered with a tail, so therefore it's not clear whether it's a Zachar or a Keva. So, says the Gemara, when you bring a lamb which has a tail, I understand. I see Seira, Michael and Meimar. What are you going to say by a goat? There's no tail. Therefore, it's clear that what she said is not true. We should go by the Maisim. Ella being zachar than a kevais live adaitayo dinish. Difference between male and females, people do not readily know, and therefore it's not something that's completely nicker. Says the Gemara Nacha Kasha Pesach Sheshachta L'Shem Asham Leiratzu. Why the Hai Ben Shana Hai Ben Shetayim? It's a different animal, and if it's a different animal, it should be clear that which he's bringing. Says the Gemara, there is a scenario in which an asham could as well be vasham mitzaira. Therefore, therefore, it's not clear that what he said is not accurate. Amar l'shama asham gzelos l'sham asham mi'ilos. But let's say he said explicitly at the time of the shechita, he shechted this for the asham zelos asham mi'ilos. Michael and Meimar. And furthermore, Hashem Gzilos, Hashem Ilosh, Shachtel, Hashem Pesach, as well, they Ratsu, the Pesach ben Shana, Vai ben Shnaim Shana. Again, so his Kavanah should be meaningless because it's clear that which he's doing. Ella, bin ben Shana, bin ben Shnaim, Lava Daiteu, de Inish. That's such a big difference. Tika ben Shana, de Mechsik ben Shnaim, Vika ben Shnaim, de Mechsik ben Shana. What is Frakti Gemara? Seir sheshachtu l'shem asham leiratzu. So a seir that was brought as an asham should work. Why? The height semer v'haseir, because the asham, which is a sheep, is as a wool of ada, and the goat is not. So they're clearly two different entities. So says the Gemara, Amri dechra ochma. People are going to assume it's just a black ochma, black ram. Egel par shachtul l'shem pesach v'asham leiratzu. The egel par pesach v'asham leka. The egel par bepesach. The egel bepar and a pesach and an asham is not shayich. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ein hachanami. According to Rav Shimon, it would be kosher. Why? Because the fact that what you said something else is clearly meaningless. As we turn over to Gilma Beis, and therefore we reinterpret that according to Rav Shimon, umay zvachim. What does that mean? Roiv zvachim, meaning so the Gemara concedes that according to Rav Shimon, it will not apply 100% throughout all cases. Rava Amar, says Rava, a new answer to explain Shitas Rav Shimon when you bring the Menachos Shalishma. Rava Amar, like Kasha, kan be'kaimetz mincha l'sham mincha, kan be'kaimetz mincha l'sham zevach. What did he do the Kemitza for? If you just did it for another mincha, or that's when it's going to be kosher. But if you did the Kemitza l'sham zevach, that's when it's not. Zevach, mincha l'sham mincha. And if he does a mincha for a mincha, it's going to be kosher. Why? Because the Torah says, "Zayis Torah ha mincha, Torah achas l'chol ha menachos, mincha l'shem zevach, v'zayis Torah ha menachos, v'zevach lo yiksiv." Ay, v'atanim v'nei shem aiseh mechichan aleh kamar. Says the Gemara. 1 second. What is the impetus of Shitas Rav Shimon? Shitas Rav Shimon is the reason why the mincha is kosher, because the maiseh are mechichan aleh. That it's clear what's going on. Says the Gemara, that's not seemingly what this brisa indicates. Says the Gemara, I should say even more, except for when the mincha is brought for a zevach, it should be kosher. Why? Because the mincha itself shows us that clearly this is not for a zevach, it's for a mincha. Says the Gemara, you're right, Achi Kamar. Avagad the machshava, to lay minkarahi, even though the machshava is not clear, V'tipasel, therefore the mincha should be pasel. So why, according to Rav Shimon, is it going to be kosher? Because it says the Torah is the Torah mincha, Torah achas b'chol ha-minachos. Umay aval b'zvachim. Okay, so how do we explain the end of the brayse that Rav Shimon said by a zevach list is not true? Afal gav the shchita achas lekulam. Even though there's one shchita for all of them, still it doesn't work because those Torahs ha-mincha v'zevach loy ksiv. Says the Gemara. So this is how we learn Rav Shimon al meyata chatas chaylev sheshachtu l'shem chatas dam l'shem chatas avodas chavim l'shem chatas nazir. We have the chatas of chaylev that you shechted for a different kavana, whether it's for dam, avodas zara, nazir, mitzaira, l'shem chatas mitzaira. Take a share of a tiratzeh. Ask the Gemara. It should be kosher. Based on the pasuk we just quoted, one of those Torahs achatas, Torah achas l'chol chatayis. Says Gemara, Rav Shimon achanami. It's true, according to Rav Shimon, achatas for a different type of achatas is kosher, and it's going to be alu l'bayim v'shem chayva. L'Rabbanan ha'marava chatas chilav sheshachtu l'shem chatas dam shem chatas avodas chavim says Rava Kashira, but Shabchatas Nazir, Shabchatas Mitzaira, then it's going to be psula. Why? Tani Oilais Bahadayu Ninu, because these bring Oilais together with it, and therefore people are going to think that the Chatas is the same. Says the Gemara, Ravacha Breda Rava, that's how Rava explained Rav Shimon. Now Ravacha Breda Rava, Masila Likula Lipsula. Why? Because says the Torah of Shachras, Oisa Lachatas Shem Oisai Chatas, which means it has to be for that very Chatas, but can't be for anything else. And that's the second way of learning Rav Shimon, Shitas Rava. Now says the Gemara, we have a third way of learning Rav Shimon, the steering Rav Shimon, by the whether the mincha is lishma or not. Rav Ashi Amar loy kasha. Kam becomes mincha machvas l'shom mar cheshes. Kam becomes minchas machvas l'shom minchas mar cheshes. And the Gemara explains the son that we had in Daf Beis, but now the Gemara explains it. Machvas l'shom mar cheshes. If you're doing the kimitza of a machvas for a mar cheshes, but you didn't call it a minchas machvas, then b'mana kachashiv. What's your kavanah? To put it in the keli umachshava b'mana leipsula, and machshava for the sake of the keli doesn't passel. Minchas machvas l'shem minchas marchashes. But if your kavanah was explicitly for a mincha machas, for a mincha marchashes, then b'mincha tapasla machshava kamachashiv. Your intent was for the mincha, and that's why it does not work. What do you do with Rav Shimon? And he said the reason is my son. Says the Gemara, and with this we conclude. Even though the machshava is clear, still tipasel. Only dafka by zvicha. But but if you have a different types of carbon minchas, you have a chareva, you have a dry one that you brought it for the sake of a belula, a mixed mincha with shemen. Amayam Rav Shimon, why did Rav Shimon say his din that's going to be kosher? Amarlei l'shambila ba'alma. It just means that he mixed it for another type of mixture, but avada there was kavana by the mixing. If he says l'shem shlamim, it should just be l'shem shalom for a piece. So why is it going to be kosher? Whereas over here it's not so clear. Minchas gufei miyaki belula. You don't call it mincha belula. Chomechas belula b'Hashem ksev, and therefore we learn out belula b'Hashem ikri belula. But stama lo ikri. Therefore, that's the reason that's going to be the chilek. We'll pick it up from as the Gemara is now going to contrast the three ways Rav Ashi and in three ways of learning the steering of Shimon b'siyata dishmaya.